a great guy.
Yeah, he's got a lot of responsibility.
He does, and the board's in this week. I think they.
Everybody, it is 4 o'clock on Monday, July 13th, and we'll call to order the Board of Directors meeting for the Holland Board of Public Works. Janet, can we have a roll call, please?
Thompson,
Here.
Maloof,
Here.
Lilly,
Here.
Ingvers,
Here.
Lynn, Corbin,
Here.
Couch,
Here.
Van Beek,
Here.
We have a quorum for the record. Would the board like to make a motion on the agenda?
I move that we accept the agenda as it's presented.
Second.
Motion by Lilly, second by Maloof. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. At this time, we'll open our meeting up to communications from the audience. We provide this opportunity for anybody who would like to address the board, an opportunity to do so, requesting you state your name and address for the record, and adhere to a 5-minute speaking limit. Any communications from the audience today? Hearing none, we'll close communications from the audience and turn it over to our general manager.
I'd like to pause a minute and see if you want to do
Oh.
elections first. That'd be great. I think that's right, number 4.
Yes, it is.
Yes, please.
I almost
All right, sorry.
as we do at the beginning of every fiscal year, we elect the managers or the officers of the board, the president and vice president. Would the board like to make a motion on the president?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept you as president for another term and look forward to having you do that. Carolyn. Oh, Carolyn did the same time?
You can.
Okay.
Oh.
And also, you want to go ahead?
No, I'm not allowed.
Oh, that's
I'm
right.
just
That's
riffraff.
right. You got it, Bob.
He's our
So
consultant.
Carolyn Maloof as vice chairman.
I second that.
It's a motion by Lilly, supported by Engbergs. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Outstanding.
All right.
Back on target.
Now we can move on to the consent agenda. Great to be with you today. We've got 4 items on the consent agenda for your consideration this afternoon. First item is a request to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 8 and the study session of June 22. Second item is to recommend that the mayor and city council appoint Brian Ritchie to the Water System Advisory Council to fill out a term left vacant by the departure of Pete Byer. We'll have an expiration date in that term of December 31, 2029. Third item is to request an engineering contract services, approval of an engineering services contract with Fishbeck in the amount of $145,650 plus a 10% contract contingency. Pending approval is to form by the city attorney and approval by the Water Reclamation Facility Administrative Committee. And that's for improvements to the secondary clarifiers numbers 5 and 6. The fourth item and last item is a request to adopt the attached resolution, which is something we do every year at this time, to appropriate an amount to the city, in this particular case, based upon the previous results from the years prior in terms of wholesale income and the retail sales revenue. That amount appropriation for this year and transfer to the city from the electric utility would be $9,808,504. And so there's a joint resolution that's attached that you would adopt, and then that would be forwarded to city council for their consideration and adoption.
I'd like to propose that we accept the consent agenda as it's been presented.
Second.
Motion by Lilly, second by Maloof. Any further discussion on any of the consent agenda items?
Curious on the transfer of funds to the city, what is that historically, I'm not arguing the percentage or any of that, what's that historically been from a monetary value?
Oh, boy.
I have a number in my head, but.
Yeah. So the retail, again, 6.25% of the past average of the last 3 years retail sales. So if you look at the history there, you know, roughly a little over 100 million in retail sales from electric. So we're right around that 6 million, 6.5 million from the retail sales.
That's the number.
The number that has probably the greatest variation is the wholesale component. And so what we do is we look back at the last full calendar year of net income improvement that's come by way of wholesale revenue that we receive. So the energy arbitrage that we do by essentially running our units more here and then selling back the energy to the grid, as well as resource adequacy revenue that comes in from the fact that our portfolio of resources is larger than our resource adequacy needs, and therefore we can sell capacity. We look back and those we split 50-50 in terms of the impact to the bottom line with the city. And so that number is the one that's probably changed the most over the years. And just so happened we've had, because of the tightening of the marketplace for resource adequacy, it was a fairly good year for that capacity revenue for us, and that's why the number is a little bit higher this year on that.
You know, in the past, a couple of years ago, you produced a graph that showed the history.
Yes.
And it would be really cool to have that graph reproduced and then have a stacked bar, so you see the wholesale and the retail component. My constituents would love that.
Okay, I can do that. The other thing I could do, and Becky could maybe do it real easily, is that in the presentation of the budget this year, so if you actually go to the, I think it's under the,
Correct.
it's actually in the presentation document. In the finance. If you don't mind, just bear with us a second. It won't take long. In the finance folder, it would be under the board presentation documents for finance.
Do you remember which presentation?
I do. Yeah, either one has the chart in it. It's pretty easy to. So if you scroll down, there you go, finance. Go to budget, and then the budget the year, 27, and then presentation documents down there, 20. Yep, right above that. It's kind of in the middle of the screen, FY 27.
It's Dave AI.
Yeah, right there. Yeah, and then the top one's fine.
That's scary.
Yeah. I was here recently. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a screen right there. Can we shrink that in? So you can see the bottom part of that bar graph, that's the more consistent line. That's the retail component. The one that moves around a lot is that top bar, and that's the wholesale component. And that'll swing a little bit based upon the energy market conditions, resource availability that we have to serve into it, and also the capacity market.
Yeah, the 6 million was in my head.
Yeah, yeah. Does that help?
Yeah,
All right.
I'll grab that.
Yeah,
Because I
we
know
can
that's
get
been a point of contention in the past.
Thank you for that comment. All right.
Any further questions on the consent agenda items? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda items are approved.
All right, thank you. Yeah, major project update. We're moving on to the area item 6, and we have a couple closeout memos this afternoon to start with. First one is one that hopefully most of you were here on the 22nd and were able to see firsthand a little bit, but Phil Arar is going to come up and walk us through the result of the customer service ergonomic remodel. And I would say it's more than just ergonomic. I think there's been some customer enhancements as well. Safety as well, and also just some privacy, I think, improvements within that customer experience. And so, Phil, I'll turn it over to you with some more details there.
Thank you. So this project has been around for a while in concept, and we kicked it off physically in January of this year, and it completed a month or so ago with punch list items and furniture and getting our staff back in their space and turning this room back over for use as we have it today. So budget-wise, just covering that real quick, we had $400,000 approved for our budget. We ended up spending $287,000 of that, so we came in 28% under budget. We took the opportunity, it was, labeled mostly an ergonomic study, but there was some security items we took care of with the front wall of our staff. We added a secondary egress out of the customer service area. The one thing, and I talk to the staff in there fairly regularly, but the one thing that I've heard from the staff that they absolutely like the most is that new door that faces to the west, because the afternoon sun, they get it right through Adriana's office, through that door into their space. They really like that feature, and they also like that it is a quick way to get out to the lobby if they have to go greet a customer or a delivery or something like that. That is the number one thing I hear positive comments from our staff on. We kicked it off right after the first of the year, after the holidays, by moving our staff in here, and then Martin Luther King Day, we took advantage of the fact that it was a holiday for us here at the BPW in the city, but not a contractor holiday. So that was the day we made the most noise and cut that opening in, which is right next to Adriana, who has a job that's, I would say, more noise sensitive, dealing with applicants and new hires and things like that. So that was the day we could make a lot of noise and no one was here to be affected by it. So that was one feature. The other piece of it too is our facilities team was rock stars on this one. They did a lot of work getting our staff in here, getting them set up, getting them comfortable, and then in return getting them back out of here into their new space and turning this back over for more of a public use. So that's kind of the highlights of the project. We also actually upgraded the lobby, the airlock when you come in the front door. We upgraded that. The carpet in there was a little tired, so we upgraded it to a walk-off carpet, which is designed for that use. So some features about it.
Any surveying of any customers or anything as part of the process that you did post-construction?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if the staff has heard. Maybe Rebecca and her team have heard some things, but I'm not aware of it.
I think it helps now that we've got, it took a little bit of time to get some of the lights, over the areas, and with that privacy improvement, it also sort of kind of cuts down on some of the line of sight a little bit from the customer service representative to the doorway. So having the lights that indicate that the booth is available, I think really helps give some clarity to those that are coming in that way. But we do appreciate having the additional space there so you can have a conversation that's not so, being heard by everybody around you. Yeah. I think
Very
that's it.
good.
Yeah,
Any other
otherwise-
questions for Phil?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
And then the next one for closeout is the Steckity lift station. And I think Brian Ritchie's gonna walk us through the result of that. So Brian?
All right, thanks, Dave. So mine's not as exciting as new office space, but it is a new lift station.
Yeah.
So this project was kind of a long time coming. Was originally budgeted for FY25. Bids came in a little higher than expected, so we made some changes and we're able to get the number down quite a bit. Now, with the upgrades to the station, we knew coming into it there was a potential for an increase with the condition of the wet well. So it is a fairly deep wet well, and after they got down to it, found out for it to be in pretty subpar condition, which required a little additional work there, which is the amendment that we had for the increase in the budget. So we originally had budgeted at $800,000. Yeah, if you want to scroll down there. and amended it to 855. Now that includes everything, engineering, the SCADA implementation for the station, and then we do still have some landscaping to be done actually this week. So came in at 855,513. Just for reference, the original bid we got back in 2024, I think, was 1.2 million. So still came out pretty well there. So I have some pretty good photos here to walk you through. So this is the demolition of the station. As you can see, getting down to that would be the kind of middle of the wet well there. And then all that dewatering in place. It was fairly wet, again, being as deep as it was. So that was set up at the beginning of that project. So that's the bottom of the wet well. You can see at the top of the screen there, that's exposed rebar, which you don't want to see. So hence why we had to get a little deeper and get down to the very bottom of the structure. And then there's another photo a couple after where it shows it being lined. So there's kind of the surface view with the new wet well, and a vent on the wet well, which it did not have before. So that in theory is something we need to have, right? So that we're off-gassing what needs to be off-gassed. We're not trapping that H2S in there, which can create that corrosive environment. And then just on the top side of that is the valve structure, where it's coming out of the station, going through that valve structure, and then actually back towards Lake Macatawa there. That's Lake Macatawa to your, what would be north there. And then the force main runs parallel along South Shore to the east. So here's the inside of the new wet well with it being lined. Pump guide rails, pumps down there, you kind of can see in there, but much cleaner, much easier to work with, and again, kind of explains some of those additional costs there with the additional work required for this.
That final coating on those are what?
It's a polymer, but it's providing that H2S resistance, and it also is not as slippery, I'm told, as some other products, so that if we had to get in there and work on it, it's not as, hard to work in. Yeah, it was installed by plumbers who does a lot of lining for us in our sewers and manholes. This is the valve structure itself, so check valves and isolation valves tying into the force main there. Nothing too exciting. And then here's kind of the control panel view. So that's another aspect too related to the cost. The driveway behind that there for the resident was replaced. Again, this was something to help with the contractor in terms of access to be able to actually work on this station. So as part of that agreement, we replaced her driveway up to the house. Just allowed us to have a little more access to it, getting to do what we need to do. Again, here's the panel and then the ATS panel in between there. So, and then I think the final picture shows you just kind of the final view. There will be some trees kind of wrapping this in to blend it in a little bit more for the residents. And then generator was actually in the back of the pad. What was needed to be moved just with the size of the panel being a little bit larger. So station is operational and up and running right now.
Will you put any vehicle stops in there at all to bollards? Bollards.
Yeah, that's what the yellow thing is right there in front of the generator pipe bollard. There's another one on the back side of that, so that somebody coming to that driveway wouldn't run into it. So we didn't want to block that off more than we needed to, though, because when we need to pump that wet well down where that vent is, we got to be able to get up to it with the truck. So we want to make sure that that's protected, or that we have access to it.
So are you taking this picture from the driveway, or?
This is from the
roadway?
corner of Secady and South Shore. Yep, looking southeast. Yep. Yep, then a little bit of patchwork there in the HMA path for the force main connection coming out to South Shore.
Any more questions?
Just want to take this opportunity as well. I don't think we've really made this known yet, I think publicly to the board, but you've heard from Brian, over months, with a number of important projects that he's represented, but he represented a lot of those in a previous role as the engineering supervisor for that area, and recently has been promoted to the superintendent for water and wastewater services. So I want to give Brian a congratulations as well, and also going to hear from Bruce Karlstrom tonight as well, and And just a note of congratulations for Bruce as well, as he is backfilling Brian's position as the engineering supervisor in that area. So hearing from people that you may have heard from before, but in different roles, and certainly appreciate all of their work and congratulate them on their new assignments. So
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
thank you.
On to regular agenda items.
Yeah, we can. I just want to pause here a minute.
Oh,
A couple
I'm sorry,
things on
the
the
other
rest of the
projects.
major projects, if I can. Just a few things. Really excited to note that all the fiber hoods now have reached substantial completion on the Holland City Fiber project. So all of them have been turned over for activation of services in those areas. And so really good work here on the part of the team, as well as EX2 and pushing to that completion time frame. We talked about this being a 2.5-year project when we launched it, and it was launched right after the start of the year 2.5 years ago. And so to be able to hold to that schedule, hold on our plan from a cost perspective as well. Actually, I think it's coming in for the passings network slightly under budget. And that's really exciting to see that. And we're seeing good growth as well on the revenue side here. You can see as of the end of the fiscal year, we've gotten up over 4,600 services and a revenue on a monthly basis that's flowing at just over $225,000. So really good situation to see that continue to increase. We're also seeing a lot of people from fiber hoods that we've been in some time ago starting to call us and activate or want to activate services in their area as well. So seeing that take rate improve in some of those areas that we've been already. So the other things I just note here, a couple other projects, you see that we're about 2/3 of the way. That's Keith's 2/3, 66% of the meters have been replaced in the water system. And then just unit number 7, if you can scroll down. We had some difficulty on startup here, and we're doing some diagnosis to try to figure out what's happening with that, but it's causing us some problems reaching the ability to get back online regularly with that unit. So APG, who's the firm that's been helped us with the overhaul, is on site. Not sure if it has something to do with the new cooling pattern for the stage 2 buckets that were replaced, but just doing some investigation here. Obviously really important this time of year to get that fixed and online because of the hot weather going on, but just want to note that's happening. The other thing that could impact us also, if you look at units 10 and 11, this is at Holland Energy Park, the gear sets. You can see here that the ones that we were buying, we're not going to make it in time for the October outage, but there's another utility that has the same gear set that ours needs, and they've agreed to kind of forego their gear set as long as they don't need something to be implemented prior to our outage time frame. And having these things aligned with our outages are really important because we want to minimize our downtime. And the outages that we are having are for normal maintenance outages based upon hours of operation and starts. So, having that be able to be arranged for is an important thing to keeping us minimizing the amount of downtime that we'd have for Holland Energy Park. So the other things that were here, they're available. If you had questions about any of the other projects, be happy to answer them. But otherwise, again, they're available on your board SharePoint page that if you want to take a look at it.
Dave, I've noticed on some of the buses around town and a couple of billboards, we are advertising the fiber
Yes.
system program.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we've also considered other marketing kind of
Yes.
activities to counter AT&T's dropping of their prices to some people, actually.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of our improvement in applications are actually coming by way of targeted Google advertising. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been paying for kind of boosting our presence where people are making a search for this type of service in our area, and actually based upon the clicks that are happening and then seeing what's happening with that click in terms of getting to an actual application for service, we're able to see that there's a very significant return on investment being made for that advertising. So that's been very successful actually for us.
Good. You were kind of holding off on doing the full-blown advertising until the passings were complete.
Yeah, and I think now that we're at that place, I think we're in a good spot. Reminder that, you know, we're sort of moving from the firm we had been using for ITG for the service drops and pivoting to another firm that's going to be help supplement our staff. So obviously we want to also make sure that we're creating a good experience from the standpoint of the time frame that somebody's actually applying for service to when we're able to tell them that they're able to get service, right? And so part of that's been sort of managing that situation from a resource standpoint. But I think we feel pretty good with the process we're doing on the Google advertising to be able to boost some of that. So we're seeing really nice progression in the uptick on fiber hoods that we've already been to some time ago in terms of that applications for service coming in now.
Great.
Yeah. So that's the major project update. If there's no other questions on that, we can move into the item 7 area, which is the regular agenda. And I mentioned that Bruce is going to be coming up here in a minute. This first item, 7A, is a request for an engineering design contract for 32nd Street. And what you're going to hear a lot about is kind of a pivoting in terms of what we were looking at doing this year. And a lot of that, again, this is going to be a joint project with the city, and some of the city's work has kind of allowed us to see an opportunity to take advantage of that and also you know, do some improvements that are going to also de-risk some of our water transmission system in that area by moving some service drops off from that. So I will let Bruce talk more specifically about the details of this project and any other things that he wants to add. So Bruce, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so as Dave was describing, this project is along 32nd Street. It is a water main improvement project originally planned for fiscal year 28. And this project is needed to be moved ahead to fiscal year 27 to meet the city's schedule. This project is not going to increase the budget. We're not asking for more money. So I want to make that clear. And as Dave already mentioned, this is we're going to be adding an 8-inch distribution water main that will remove taps that are currently on our transmission main. So improve the resiliency of that. And then we are also improving east of there, about another mile of water main. And we issued an RFP, and I heard back from several firms, got a lot of great prices, and we are recommending that you guys approve the contract with Spalding D. Decker in the amount of $598,589 with a 10% contingency. And this is approved, and we also recommend that you guys approve the fiscal year 27 capital budget amendment to designate the $5.5 million planned for Maplewood to 32nd Street and the $1.7 million approved for a joint project to Maplewood to align with the timing of the city's transportation projects. So
The only add-on I would say here, right, is that they weren't the low bid necessarily, but they were the ones that had the requisite experience for observation, right? It was kind of the main, and maybe some other services that they provide, or their other experiences that they had.
Yeah. They weren't technically the low bid here, but a few things on that. So we decided to go, we're recommending we go with them because they are the ones that have the most relevant experience, and they demonstrated they can meet the schedule on this project. This project has a very tight schedule where essentially they have to have 80% design by September, so it's a quick turnaround. And Spalding Decker, very confident they can meet it. Also, they provided a couple ways that maybe their price could be reduced, and specifically with the soil borings, Fleece was technically the lowest, but they also didn't quite get the soil borings as steep as they should be. So the prices are probably pretty comparable. So just like to point that out. But ultimately, we recommend choosing Spalding because they have the experience at demonstrating in that they can meet the schedule.
Has Spalding done work for us before?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What kind of projects were those, same?
So last year they did 40th Street, and which was with a joint project with the city. So they have experience working between us. Separately, we've had Spalding help out with our transmission main prep work project. So.
They're a solid.
Yeah, their PM too for this used to be at Holland Engineering actually, so a lot of familiarity in working with us, the city, so.
I think that PM was involved with the Holland Heights area recent work, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is that Becky?
What's that?
Becky?
Linnell.
Lena.
Oh, Linnell Bergenbass.
Yep.
Yep.
The breaking off of the distribution, setting up the separate distribution main for the residents or whatever the customers are in
Service
that area.
lines, yeah. Mhm.
Service
Yep.
lines, sorry. So getting those off the transmission line, does that allow, I mean, it obviously reduces the risk of issues. Does that, can you increase the pressure? Is it, I mean, are there other throughput advantages, or is it just getting away from having all those attachments?
Yeah, it's transmission main is really just to transfer the water, and so yeah, anytime you have these water taps directly on the transmission main, it increases the risk if we're gonna do any replacement or lining, then it just makes that process that much more complicated. But yeah, it's best practices to have these taps off of the transmission main. So yeah, there's.
Do we have many areas in the system that have connections like that?
It's
Transmission?
It's mainly this main.
Oh, is it?
Second, and
No.
then all the way up on the north side of Lake Erie.
Oh, okay.
So this is the main that's of most concern, or interface pipe.
Yeah.
That we have future plans for probably lining portions of it. So this is kind of step one of that, is getting those services off of it, knowing that we need to do that, so. Something that's been thought about and talked about for a long time, but now we're taking the opportunity to do it, yeah.
Great, thank you.
First, did you mention the projected start and completion dates?
Yeah, so the design contract, are you talking about construction? Construction should be.
Starts in fiscal year 27.
Yeah, yep. This is for the design contract, which, yeah, would start right now and end next year through construction.
So that construction would end sometime after the construction season of 27.
Correct.
Yeah. So sometime in the fall of 27, we'll be wrapping it up.
2027 construction project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is technically in our 28 fiscal year, but since
Right.
we had budget money planned for 28 going further into that year, we need to move it up into fiscal 27 to meet the timeline that's associated with some of the city's priorities in terms of road work as well. So it sort of shifts, we're just kind of shifting the projects around in terms of their timelines.
Leverage.
Could we have a motion on these recommendations?
Motion to approve the recommendation as stated. I have to read it.
Perfect.
Motion is by Maloof, supported by Enbergs. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next one I have, and again, I think the board is pretty aware here in terms of the background, but just for those that might be watching at home here real briefly, a number of years ago, the board and city council took action to acquire property along Lake Michigan and Lake Town Township with the idea that maybe sometime in the future there may be a need for another water plant down in that area. What we have kind of recognized through our planning efforts and through improvements that have been made on the transmission side of water, namely the secondary transmission line on Lakewood Boulevard, is that the potential for having a need for a water plant on the south side is quite some distance in the future, if at all in the future. And so, now, never saying never, we did want to preserve that ability, but we proposed to the board and the city council that they seek authorization from the residents of the city to allow them to sell the property as the board and council would deem fit. That was put to a vote, and in 2022 that was actually approved by the citizens of Holland, that allows the board and council to move forward with a sale of that property. Since that time, we have been marketing the property, and it's been challenging, I think, to get one buyer interested in the totality of a 24-acre parcel that has 325 feet of frontage on Lake Michigan at the price point that we really wanted to acquire. Alternatively, what we've been able to do is we've been able to actually receive some revenue for a portion of the project recently, and that was brought before the board and city council to essentially transact with a couple of the neighboring parcel owners to extend their boundaries to the east of their properties. And maybe, Becky, this is a good time to go ahead and bring open that other attachment. This shows the result of that here. This is the survey that was done in support of the closing of that transaction, and you can see a couple of the homes that are bolded there. The one immediately adjacent to our waterfront, which is at 327 feet plus or minus to the far north along Lake Michigan. The adjacent 128 feet home, and then there's a gap, and then another 100 feet plus or minus. Those two property owners took two equal size rectangular chunks out of the 24 acres. And that yielded about $400,000 in sales revenue associated with those transactions to support the BPW's water utility. We also, through this process, have recognized that if we were to, in the future, preserve the option of drawing in water from Lake Michigan and moving it inward for treatment, we would need some land to accommodate a pump house. And based upon the split minimums that Lake Town Township has and the road frontages that are needed for those splits, you can see this survey also contemplates the remaining rectangle has been split between what's called Parcel A and remainder. Parcel A being 9.3 acres of waterfront property that's basically a rectangle now, and then with a distance of about, I think that's 1,263 feet, and then another 600 feet that would be left to the east end. That remainder we're anticipating will remain as utility property long-term in case we need to build a pump house somewhere in that location. We would also be preserving an easement along the northern edge of Parcel A to allow for a micro-tunneling of a water line out into Lake Michigan sometime in the future if it would be needed. So again, here we can realize a revenue and cash to the water utility while still preserving the option for a water plant on the south side of the lake sometime in the future if deemed necessary. So the plan tonight is to recognize the fact that we've received some revenue for this. The listing agreement that we've had has expired now at this point, so it's not currently on the market. And the idea is to create a fresh listing for Parcel A. And so what's in front of you is a renewal of the relationship. We feel very comfortable with how the team of Bernie Merkel and Jim Wiersma and their team have supported this. And so what we're recommending is that we have a new listing agreement, which has been attached to this with Coldwell Banker, Woodland Schmidt, Holland. to list the remaining parcel A at 4036 Hillside Trail. And it also included in the packet is a resolution. That resolution, maybe if Becky, if you can maybe back out of this and pull up the resolution, really does three things. First of all, if you scroll all the way down to the second page, three things that it's doing is it authorizes the general manager to execute the listing agreement that's attached. It has been reviewed by Cunningham Dahlman at this point, and it's been conformed to Cunningham Dahlman's recommended changes. It also allows, which has been similar to what we had on the listing agreement at the renewal time before, is it allows the general manager to adjust the listing price, which would start at $3.49 million, so just under 3.5, by up to 20% plus or minus based upon realization of market conditions. Now, all that being said, these listing prices don't bind me to a sale. Basically, every purchase and sale agreement that would come back would still have to go to board and city council for approval. So really has to do with just being able to react without having to come back for additional actions of the board and council based upon the market conditions, but it still leaves in your hands the ability to approve those agreements. So that's really what we have in front of you today. We hope to be successful in being able to realize the maximum value for this property by having moved forward with these boundary extensions and then still being able to market the remainder of the waterfront property and being able to reserve land for future use if it's deemed necessary by some board and council in the future. Any questions?
Dave, on the listing price that you published there, have you been advised, is that are you pricing it to sell, or is it an aggressive price, or anything
Well,
like that?
obviously we're on TV right now, so I'm certainly going to couch my words carefully in terms of what that means, but you know, I think it's an appropriate market price, realizing that I think what the resolution's doing is allowing some room. But I certainly believe that we should be able to attract some competition, you know, at that price.
So you don't need do you need a
Yeah,
support?
the action would be a request for you to approve the listing agreement and also to forward the associated resolution to city council for their consideration.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proposal as it's been presented and the resolution to go to city council as necessary.
Second.
Motion by Lilly, second by Maloof. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved.
Thank you.
Seems like a much more marketable piece of property.
I think so. I just don't think that there was as much value for potential buyers, and what it did is it just sort of inflated a requesting price maybe beyond a little bit where it should be. But again, I'm pretty comfortable with where we're headed here now at this point. So thank you. Item 7C is something that we've talked with the board a little bit about over the past when we reviewed some of the delegation policies. One of the ones that we wanted to revisit, I think, from the standpoint of looking at the specificity under which the delegation policy had versus maybe what should have shown up in a management level policy. And so Joel is here. He drew the short straw, right? Is that it? No, this is a collaborative effort, really, really among the entire director team.
Fought to work on this.
That's exactly right. He drew the long straw because he actually wanted it. This is here to present some options in terms of a structure to a policy that I think puts the appropriate level of oversight and governance at the delegation policy level, but then also for your benefit, you can see what we're contemplating as it relates to a management policy underneath it. So, Joel?
Yeah, as Dave said, this policy kind of came up when the board was going through delegation policies recently. We kind of flagged this one as one we'd like to come back to. So here we are today. Delegation policy D14-2 really deals with alternative fuel vehicles and equipment. So this is really electrification of our vehicle fleet and, you know, our various lawn care equipment, those types of things is really what this is talking about. So this really dates back to, or has its history in the Community Energy Plan. Community Energy Plan really going back to 2012 that, you know, set these goals for the community for carbon reduction. Fast forwarding several years, back in 2020, the steering committee for the Community Energy Plan came forward with its recommended policy, went to board and to council, so the city adopted the same or very similar policy. But when we kind of look at it in hindsight and going through that one, it's written very different than our delegation policies are written today. Delegation policies tend to be, you know, very high level. They're really that focused on the who has the authority and then really putting the limits on that authority and then accountability for getting it done. Whereas we have management policies, which are more the how we go about achieving that. And so, because those are going to tend to potentially change a little more frequently than a delegation policy may. So the biggest really thing we're looking to change here is that separating that policy into two separate policies, and attached was the original. Normally I would like to attach a red line, but the red line would have looked pretty ugly here because it's pretty much all changing. But now you'll see a new delegation policy and a draft of the management policy we're including. I guess just wanted to highlight a few things that are changing. One, in addition to just separating kind of that who and how, the delegation policy has been rewritten more to the format that you'd typically see with the delegation policies, where it's more stating, you know, what the general manager shall not let the organization do, kind of that type of language. A couple other changes I think are notable. Probably the biggest one, the key performance indicators here. If you look in the existing policy today, it's very granular down to the individual vehicles, which are things that we track as part of our asset management program. But I don't know if that's exactly what we were hoping to achieve reporting out to the board. So what you're seeing here is a recommendation to go to more of a higher level, showing that we're meeting the decarbonization goals. So looking at, you know, the annual average fleet emission rate, the total emissions from the non-vehicle equipment, average fuel economy, average fleet utilization. So rather than looking at an individual vehicle basis when we're reporting out to you, we're looking at the fleet as a whole. How's it performing? Is it going the direction we expect it to be going? And a change here too, in the past you would have seen this report separately brought to you, and it, to be clear, it was an undertaking as well. We had basically an intern. This was their whole summer job, was putting together that report. This is information a little more readily available and is something that we would roll into the quarterly KPIs. It'd be updated annually, but it'd be in that same quarterly KPI report that the board sees today. So I think it's probably a little more aligned with how we handle the other KPIs we bring to you. One other thing, I was trying to think of things that differed. The only other one that really comes to my mind that maybe is worth noting, we have some requirements in there relative to, maybe go to the delegation policy if you could, Becky. The new. Yep, that one. If you can go down to the exceptions. So there's one exception that kind of came out of here, otherwise everything's the same, and I'll explain that a little bit. So the primary exceptions here are if the use doesn't allow us to go to, you know, an electric vehicle usage for whatever reason, just doesn't align with the operational goals. The other one is cost, obviously. So that's, and what you'll see here is it's really, the exception is if we can't show that it's more cost effective over the amortized life of the vehicle. Previously, there was just a kind of arbitrary 10% threshold there on the initial capital costs, and we thought it was more appropriate here to really focus on the life cycle costs. So that 10% threshold came out, and it's really just focused on the amortized costs, you know, that life cycle cost here when we're looking at that. Making those vehicle decisions.
Not a difference, but just what the total cost, life cycle cost?
Total life cycle costs, and generally, the EV is gonna win out on that unless there's that operational exception, but not always, I mean. But that's the history we've seen more recently, is they do win out.
So
on that.
basically, we may have made out better with an EV on a life cycle basis, but if the EV had cost
Correct.
12% more on the upfront,
We weren't
it
going
would have
that-
been excluded as it would have been an alternate, we would have done a normal vehicle purchase rather than an EV. Now, since, you know, we're looking at it just on the life cycle cost, that's not just on the upfront costs, an exclusion or an exemption from moving forward on that.
And that's what we're trying to get around, because we were seeing cases where that was happening, where it was
Right.
losing out on that initial capital cost, but it would have been a better decision on the life cycle.
That's a general world in the EVs, is the life cycle is less. Initial's typically higher, but life cycles,
Correct,
in our experience, is
Yeah.
significantly less.
correct.
If it's approved technology.
Yeah, and again, it has,
We have some in some of the equipment or the different areas yet. It's
Not
it's not
practical.
quite there yet.
and that's where that second piece
Correct.
comes in.
That's
It's
the
like,
operational.
Doesn't meet the
if
operational.
it's gonna
needs.
disrupt the department operations due to its lack of reliability,
Yep.
adequate fueling, or, you know, the fact that we don't have a good maintenance plan for dealing with it, then, you know, that could be something that if, doesn't qualify it from a duty perspective.
The other thing I do want to point out, those prior KPIs didn't just disappear. If you actually see that under the management policy, those are all items we say we're going to maintain with more in our asset management system rather than reporting out to the board. So we're still doing that to make good business decisions
Policy,
in-house,
management policy.
but it's not necessarily things we're reporting out to the board,
Yeah, so-
annually.
So the board really kind of puts discretion for me to adopt management policies with the staff and to sign off, and that's why you'll see my signature to these. That's what Joel's talking about. Under here, you're getting into a lot more of that granularity while still sort of supporting the overall goals that are articulated within the delegation policy.
So
And so
right
this-
there's
this is
the
where-
list of those items I was just referring to,
Yeah.
numbers 1 through 6.
In regards to the KPIs, and specifically in the CO2 emissions, are we gonna have a target, or is it gonna be a percentage reduction, or what's the KPI gonna look like there?
Well, that's something we would like to talk to you about, I guess.
Absolutely.
We'll have something that we would propose, but it's certainly board's, you know, role to help provide those goals for the organization over time. And so that's something we certainly can give you something to look at.
Those weren't drafted or set?
Not yet.
Not
no.
yet.
But we plan on bringing those as part of that quarterly KPI review. Like once in one of the quarters, we'll include that as an update. We're not gonna update it quarterly, but update it annually, and it would be updated in one of the 4 quarters.
Great. And I always bring this up, so I'll do it again. I do think we need to continue to look at our idle policy and make sure that we're abiding by that on sites. It's difficult, I know, and they talk about warming the vehicle up, but they don't talk about cooling it down in this text. So in that text, in that section, there's a lot of, I'm gonna use the word wiggle room, health and safety of the operators. I understand that, I agree, but I also know that, you know, that's a hard thing to judge in the moment.
One thing I guess I would say on the idling, through actually our insurance carriers, we are looking at a new software package for actually monitoring the vehicles that would give better insight into that. So it is something we can start taking a closer look at with that tool.
I agree, and I think as I drive up to my bank and shut my vehicle off and this truck's running next to me, blah, 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 you know, you gotta get that into your mindset, and it's good, just something that we can continue to work towards.
Agreed. Any other questions?
we have a motion on this recommendation.
Motion to approve the recommendation as stated.
Second.
It's a motion by Maloof, second by Engbergs. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
There's no other business that staff has, so if the board doesn't have any other business, I can move into item 9.
Please.
All right. So item 9, comments from the general manager, just noting the obvious here. It's a very hot weather week this week, so in addition to power demands being high, and we are seeing anticipated levels of demand on our system potentially approaching near record conditions for us, about 270 megawatts of peak demand anticipated over the next couple days. We also are experiencing some dry weather, and we have a dry week ahead of us. So we've been spending time, again, continuing our education and outreach to our customers and those that might be watching it on TV again today. Just again, reminder that one of our efforts that we have in the organization is to preserve the asset of water treatment plant capacity that we have, and not to unnecessarily have to add additional capital expenditure to increase the treatment capacity of water. And so our efforts and the community's efforts as a whole have been good over the last couple of years in trying to keep us under the 80% of the plant capacity threshold. We'll continue to probably make some communications out there through our social media channels this week, but also as you're talking to people around the community, that's just another thing to add to some of your conversation, and why that's important. Even though we have a large lake out there, it has a lot to do more with the actual equipment that's treating the water. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so do what you can to be wise irrigation customers. So there's that. The other thing is just to note, as relates to drinking water, thanks a lot to Ted's efforts here over the last several years, we've been applying for drinking water revolving fund dollars. We have not been regularly successful because of the scoring sheet that the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy uses, and the status of our community compared to other what are deemed disadvantaged communities. We were pleasantly surprised to hear that we've actually been awarded a combination of low interest loan and grant monies to support some of the lead service line work that we are doing in the community. It's maybe not as much on the grant side as we would like, but it's a $7.7 million identification of award eligibility, with 10% of that being grant. The other 90%, or $6.93 million, would be a 20-year 0% loan, though, because of the lead service line application. The target that we've been applying has been related to the private side galvanized lines that were previously served by a gooseneck that we replaced in the past, but that the regulation still requires us to go back and deal with. Why we've been targeting those is because we can actually spend the money in a concentrated period of time without disturbing road work, because it's all on the private side. It's on the homeowner's side. We are also going to be tracking what the state does with the implementation of the federal lead copper rule over the next coming months, to determine whether or not, like the federal government has done, that the state would do something to exempt connectors, things that are less than 3 foot in length. But if not, we at least have an advantage, maybe funding mechanism to deal with some of that work. So some good news coming out of that.
Dave, does that affect the proposal for private side replacement at does these?
It could, because, you know, obviously when we were talking about that, it was in anticipation that we might back end or backload some of that work with a bond later in that 20-year period, in that remaining regulatory life that's there. So if we have this up front, and then we're realizing it through a 0% loan that we're repaying over that period of time, then we're probably addressing some of those things earlier, and maybe in alignment with when a homeowner otherwise might do it. But again, we'll be taking a look at how this plays out in combination with the regulatory changes that are afoot in the state.
We haven't made any forward progress on that?
Well, I mean, we've identified, I think, a mechanism and actually had a lot of conversations with the city attorney's office as to why this could be something that we do. So I think we're poised to be able to move forward on that, but we haven't really spent money on that yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that this week we have another open house. Really excited to promote that Holland Energy Park on Friday, July 17. Has an open house from noon to 2 p.m. The visitor center will be open, but we'll also have this as a touch a truck event. So we'll have an electric truck there. And thank you to the city. We'll have out of public safety, they'll have a fire truck there, a salt truck, and a cruiser. We'll also have the Polar Patrol there, and if being a hot week, that will be very welcome. We also have a thing called the Dirt Lab, which is fun. You can actually operate some remote control loaders and backhoes and things like that, which is pretty cool to do. And also we'll have some representatives from ODC Network and our Parks and Rec group there as well to promote some of the activities that they have going on. So plenty to do, lots of things to see. Show up at Holland Energy Park on Friday from noon to 2 and enjoy that.
And our study session is on July 27th?
Our study session coming up on July 20, yeah.
27.
Thank you, 27. Yes, and just a little preview on that if I can. Thank you, PJ. A couple things that we're going to be talking about there. One, made a lot of progress on battery energy storage. So a lot of things happening in parallel right now. We're doing financial analysis of the proposal and the revenue streams associated with that. We've also been interviewing owner-engineer firms to support us during the build, transfer, construction of a battery energy storage system. And then we've also been working on some contract negotiations with the proposer of that. And so we want to bring to you, matter of fact, bids for the owner's engineer services are due yet this week or next week, I think it is, right, Joel? This week yet. And we don't know if we'll have enough time to evaluate them and be in a position to pivot to a special meeting for the July meeting. But if not, we'll plan on that. We'll probably have something for you for action in the August meeting. But then we want to be able to bring you along on this process we're doing. There are some timelines because the proposals we got for the battery storage call for us having some decisions made by the end of September. And so we're working towards ultimately trying to get some sort of agreement in place and recommendation to you in September on that. So again, more activity coming for that session. The other thing that we'll be talking about is a little bit on strategic planning. 3 years ago, in the fall of 2023, this board sat down with staff and a facilitator to walk through a renewal of our strategic plan. And in your governance documents, you have identified a commitment to do that every 3 years. And so this fall will be 3 years from that time frame. And believe it or not, we're coming up on it already. So our hope is to maybe show you a little bit of the work that we've done ahead of a renewal process by looking back at our 7 strategic priorities that were identified last time and the specific efforts that have been addressed to try to align with our goals in that regard. And also to set the stage from a timing perspective this fall and what kind of prep work would be needed to help with preparing for facilitated strategic planning effort once again. So that's also part of the July study session. Thank you, PJ, for a reminder on that.
Any communications from the board? Hearing none, could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.